good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here with us. I just pinned Chris. Hopefully he'll be here soon, but allow us to introduce ourselves, then we can go ahead and get started. So I will, Kevin, why don't you go first? It's your country and KubeCon. So.
Good to see everyone. I'm Kevin Wang. I'm a maintainer for many CNCF projects, and I'm also currently on the TOC, helping a lot of TOC work. Yeah, it's a very good chance to meet you all in person.
So Kevin is actually the most dedicated TOC member on the TOC team. He's also a vice chair. Every single time we have TOC meeting, which is 11 p.m. his time, he joins almost every time, and even when he's on vacation. So
that's a bad example.
Yeah, so my name is Lin Sang. You probably remember me from this morning's keynote. I'm also a CNCF TOC member, ambassador at CNCF. I work at Solo. I'm a head of open source at Solo. Really excited to be here and with you all here. So we are going to do a little bit different. We do have a couple of slides, but we were thinking maybe open it up to hear what questions you guys have. I want to be interactive because it's been a long day, 2 days here. You know, nobody needs to read more slides. So with that, who wants to kick off the first questions? Just raise your hand. We can bring the mic to you. So any topics is in game. So you can ask us such as, what does the CNCF TOC do? How do you grow up to be a TOC member? What are the career advice you can offer to navigate the leadership in the cloud native ecosystem? You know, our thoughts on technologies. Any other questions that's interesting? Feel free to ask.
Anyone would like to be the first?
Well, if nobody asks, I'm going to ask Kevin a question. So Kevin, you come through as maintainer seats on the TOC, right? Can you quickly explain to everybody what does maintainer seats mean and what you have to do to go through that process? And what's the secret sauce of you have to winning that seats from your perspective?
So for TOC, actually the seats, we currently have 11 seats. And it comes from different kind of election group, right? We have seats from the governing board, elected, appointed seats. We also have end user appointed seats, and also the maintainer seat and the TOC elected seat. Yeah, so for maintainer seat, it's like all the graduated maintainers, graduated project maintainers, and the incubating level project maintainers have the vote. So basically, I think to me, my background is more likely a maintainer from some of the project. And when I was preparing running for TOC, I also helped a lot of maintainers of different projects, and that's why I got support from them, because they also have kind of their expectation to the TOC, right? We always hear some of the maintainers complain about the process, right? So some of the maintainers come to me, said that, hey, we got a vote for you, please help speed up the process. Yeah, that's my kind of my job as a maintainer seat, I think.
All right, perfect. We have Chris here. Who doesn't know Chris? Chris probably doesn't need an intro. What do you think? All right.
Questions, yeah.
All right. So we want to hear from you all then. Yeah, just raise your hand if you have any questions.
We have boring slides, but questions are more entertaining. So.
Anybody?
Oh, yes.
All right. Perfect. Thank you.
I know we're at the end of the conference, so it's...
Oh, thank you. Chris Middleton from Diginomica in the UK. Thank you for inviting me here. It's been a great conference so far. I wanted to ask a little bit about, obviously we've been hearing a lot about AI and how that's changing the environment very much. But we haven't heard anything about some of the things that the AI vendors are talking about, such as vibe coding, AI taking over coding completely. I wondered if you have any thoughts about that, because I wondered, just as a big, if this isn't a stupid question, whether it risks sort of removing the distinction between open source computing and proprietary, given that people are just using code that's been generated from somewhere, they don't know where, they're maybe not checking it and so on. If you have any thoughts about that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like what you're directly, asking for. Like, is vibe coding a trend, or are people playing with a variety of tools, out there to generate all sorts of things? Yes, right. We have our own maintainers are using a variety of different either AI code assisting tools. I don't know if that falls in the vibe coding camp, but a lot of developers are using these tools within our community. If it makes their job easier, it helps in some way, great. It's being used. We kind of, in CNCF, we view ourselves as providing the kind of the building blocks. So, the people out there that are building vibe coding, tools, and companies will use CNCF projects to go enable those platforms. So, what people necessarily build with our projects, we don't necessarily, care. Like, we'll use some of that output to make our lives, easier. I think you're maybe asking a broader question of like, does somehow like open source get impacted by just like more stuff being produced? I mean, great, more code out there. I mean, there's a lot, there's already a ton of code, out there, right? And people will just use what's best out there. None of these tools are actually perfect yet by any means. They do help, but they're not going to help with maintenance or potentially security issues and kind of like the day-to-day job of like what a lot of our maintainers have to deal with in CNCF, which is the actual like production maintenance of projects, which is a very, very different type of task.
I think as a follow-up, sorry, but just as it's top of mind, I think what I'm really referring to is those CEOs who, for whatever reason, are talking about AI can do 100% of coding. I've heard CEOs say that they're not employing junior coders anymore. Yeah. They're just using the AI. And CNCF's research was talking about that the majority of users of your systems, of open source systems, have 10 years experience, which suggests they're like the previous generation, not the generation coming through. So I wondered if that's really what I'm driving at, the complete automation of coding, how that affects the open source environment. Or whether it doesn't affect it at all and it's just BS.
No, I mean, it affects it in like more helping hands, whether they're actual humans or agents or, bots is a good thing, right? And if you kind of look at it, maintainers have always had to deal with contributions from all over, all over the world and all over different skill sets, right? Sometimes you get a drive-by contribution and like someone fixes a spelling mistake or someone implements something that you don't really want or potentially ruins, the architecture of the system. Like, this has always existed. These tools just kind of accelerate that burden on maintainers to kind of manage and deal with. But I don't know if you're going to say something, Lynn, because I know a lot of companies are using these tools in very different aspects, but like, people aren't necessarily firing, engineers or, necessarily getting rid of engineers and replacing them with agents that are doing all the work, because to actually produce production software, you need, like, it's a different skill set than just like bootstrapping an app. Like, I've talked to some. What this stuff has done is actually has made some CEOs and maybe product managers a little bit more annoying, because they could actually go, prototype something a little bit more quickly and influence things a little bit more different, which I think is actually a value add. But day-to-day engineers are completely using this stuff, in a different way. Like
Yeah,
maybe like you're using Cajun internally, I think probably.
Yeah, I can add kind of some thoughts I have. So I use Cursor myself, which is like a coding assistant. I think it was one of the best one. The other one is Windsurf. So it's enterprise software, right? So we pay monthly license associated with that. A lot of developers in our company also use that. And the way I'm looking at it, it's like a tool, right? It provides a calculator or GPS to you, but the code it's generated actually a lot of time doesn't actually work. You have to test it. You have to review the code, make sure it meets your standards, and you have to package it in a way that makes sense. Honestly, a lot of time that multiple iteration, it's still manual today. It might be automated one day, but I don't believe AI knows what to do. You know, the brain is still inside of the human, has to tell the AI what to do, and then connect the dots to whatever running environments and having the testing and the validation, and I guess the software secure supply chain, you know, all the packaging Chris talked about, it still needs to be done and certified by somebody, right, at the end of the day.
Yeah, the productization is the hard part of this. And one way to, the way I kind of think about it now is there's the CEO of Shopify, Toby, you know, recently kind of stated that like everyone in that company, engineering or not, like has to be basically AI first or AI native. Like you have to like learn how to use these tools and get value out of them. Otherwise, you're going to be left behind or no longer an employee. Companies who don't have that approach are going to go fall behind because they're going to ship software less. So I think that is really the big change happening, where companies are either AI enabled or, you know, AI native, for lack of a better word, or not. You know, folks that are not AI native are going to lose to their competitors.
Yeah, and also to me, I think a lot of the engineers have been discussing, like, you know, language is just the kind of tool. Especially when you need to switch to another developing language, you kind of previously it takes time to learn, right? Especially you don't know some of the functions or method provided by that language. But with AI as an assistant, it helps you quickly have a very, you know, easy prototype to start. But in the end, you still need to do the design, and that's kind of very important. As for now, like for most of the open source project, we care a lot about open architecture, and also we kind of needed to compare multiple implementations between different requirements. Sometimes you need to make the choice, not just a way to implement that. I think that part is becoming more and more important. Yeah.
Like trade-offs, basically. Does that answer your question? Like, the tools are being used, right? But engineers are not necessarily getting replaced. It's just they're spending time on different things.
Sorry, as a final follow-up question to all of that, are you worried that the more coders, developers, software engineers use AI to do the tasks that they used to do themselves, that expertise in how to check the code, as you were talking about, might start to sort of ebb out of the business, that they simply won't know how to check to where is the problem, why isn't it working? Is that something that worries you?
Trying to think of like
I would say maintenance of the code is definitely worrisome, right? Because if you look at the developers today, let's say if I write 1,000 lines of code, I'm sorry, with AI, now you could write a lot faster because, I'm so sorry about this microphone now, it was not done intentionally. You could write a lot faster, then who's going to maintain that code, right? Right. Can you rely on the AI to maintain that code? Maybe partially, but not entirely. So basically, you have to kind of do more now with the speed provided by the AI. Sorry, I don't think.
Yeah, no, you could switch. You could switch. Yeah, you want to switch to something if you want to.
Okay, we can share.
Yeah, we can
it
share.
It doesn't work. But, okay.
Okay, if it works. I think the bigger problem, like the way I look at it, I view it in a positive light where it will get easier, hopefully, to contribute to open source projects using a lot of these, AI tools. But the challenging still bit is on the maintainers who are on the hook for the quality and kind of, let's call it production readiness of the project to kind of deal with all this inbound. Like we've had some complaints from a CNCF staff and leadership perspective, like, hey, we're getting overburdened by just like let's say a slop or random stuff coming in. Can you help us with this? Or like, is there another AI bot or tool that we could install to help filter and manage these types of things? So that's kind of where we're seeing some of the problems, at least within our particular community.
All right, who wants to take the next question?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that question.
Yeah.
That was a great icebreaker, so thank you. So for folks who join a little bit late, you're welcome to ask us any question that we have some knowledge, whether it's our CNCF TOC work, or how do you grow technical leadership within CNCF, or some of the perspective we have around different technologies in CNCF. So all questions are good questions.
We also went through a massive... Yeah, I know. That's me, because I've been running around all day without charging. We also did a big restructuring recently with tags and special initiatives, and we're happy to talk a little bit about that. I had a slide somewhere that kind of talked a little bit about some of the work that we were. Let me go find a good one. So we've had to redo how we think about dividing work, in CNCF. And initially, we kind of started with, we had working groups and special interest groups, and we switched to tags, and then we kind of, every kind of growth phase and iteration kind of requires us to rethink of how we divvy up work. And this is kind of our latest approach. So some of you who have maybe participated in an existing tag have noticed maybe a recent, restructuring or renaming or archiving of Slack channels. This is all part of that process of moving to this new model, which hopefully will get us to the next level of scale.
Actually, some of you, I believe, are recently elected as the tag leaders. Can you please stand up? Nobody here? Daniel, I know you are.
We saw
I was
Daniel.
looking at you. All right, congratulations, Daniel. Let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you. So.
Perfect. Really on. Lynn, I caught your talk this morning, and I was actually surprised that you said it was your first time in Hong Kong, even though you've been attending KubeCon Seattle since 2016, et cetera. And maybe broadly between you and Chris, like, what are some of the biggest differences and challenges you're having between contributors in China? Since we're in Hong Kong, let's just only focus on the Chinese contributors versus obviously what you've seen across the world, say Western as a broad stroke in audiences. And then I have another question that comes from my husband, who's in a different talk, but we can talk about that in a bit.
So you want to ask us
the bigger differences
first?
that you see with the contributors in China versus, say, the audiences that CNCF is used to.
I can weigh in from my perspective as a maintainer on CNCF projects and also the CNCF TOC. A lot of times we overview different projects and assess whether it should be moved to the next level. So I do think there is a time zone issue that we need to do better for these tags and for these community meetings we have, because I do notice a lot of time are not in a very Asian-friendly time. And I was just talking to Kevin, who is our vice chair of the TOC, and he had to be on the TOC meeting at 11 p.m. every single Tuesday, which is super, super hard. And honestly, if I'm a human, I wouldn't do that as a volunteer job.
You are human, though.
So I feel bad because it's ridiculous to ask a community member to contribute their time at almost midnight of their time to join a community meeting. So with that, I do think as a community, we need to do better for Asian country, particularly because especially like some of this time, I think it works okay for India and Europe, just not great for China or Japan. So that's number one. Number two, I think it's also related to the time zone. I'll finish and pass over to you, sorry. Is I noticed many of the projects started in China, it tends to having a little bit hard time to grow outside of China. And I think part of this maybe it's language barrier, part of this is the time zone and also the community building and promotion outside of China. Because those take resources and efforts too. So I think that may be related to, I'll pass mic to one of you now.
Yeah, I mean, there are success. Yeah, I think your point of like building the community outside of China takes a while. There are some success stories, like Harvard did a really good job, and that came from VMware China. But it does take investment and time to do properly. Like, you know, since the early days of doing KubeCon and CNCF, it was. I remember first time coming here, and everything freaking, you know, broke on my, you know, local setup of Kubernetes because GCR was blocked. And so we learned over time, that was it's much better now, but like, you know, these things like this, until you kind of feel the pain locally, it's hard to fix, right? And you know, developers are always clever and will find ways to kind of work around this. But as an organization, you know, we try to kind of make it fair for everyone. The time zone, like I've been doing open source foundations and open source work for 25 years, like it's a difficult problem. Like you could alternate times, like there is no perfect time, and I think we have to get better at this for sure. And I don't know how we could solve this. I've never seen it done, you know, well. Someone always gets screwed at the end of the day. So if we make it sure like people equally get, because like, you know, I'll be taking meetings at like, I literally took meetings at like, you know, 6 a.m. this morning, which was not great. You know, it's hard, but you know, I feel the pain, but not everyone else.
Right,
you know,
but sometimes for your job, you would be willing to, but for volunteer work, that becomes
it's
very,
tricky.
very hard.
Yeah.
One thing I discovered here is LinkedIn is not available for mainland China, which was shocking to me because I personally use LinkedIn a lot, and I share my thoughts, my perspective, and you know, grow a large follower on LinkedIn. So if you are not plugged into that global, you know, professional networking, it's harder to promote your project, and it's also harder to share the thought leadership from mainland China to the rest of the world. So I can see that being a block. So Kevin, sorry.
So I think for contributor, still a little bit easier than the maintainers actually. Because like I and also sharing the idea with a lot of maintainers, especially located in China, that we are kind of always facing issue like, would you like to prefer grow contributors in China first or the outside first? And we have seen a lot of, especially CNCF project maintainers, they prefer like grow the outside China first. That's why we always prefer like documenting in English, meeting notes in English, and also like meeting tools. A lot of community infrastructure things in English, but that does block a lot of potential contributors. For example, they are not easy to access GitHub, not easy to access Zoom. But also I would like to emphasize that actually most of the CNCF infrastructure is globally available. Yeah, that's a very important thing. And also, like recently, there are, like also for the TOC, we are moving a lot of work to GitHub because that adds the transparency, you know, comparing to previously a lot of things on Google Docs. So I would say that we are getting better now. And also, previously, a lot of people have language issue. And today, we have the live machine translation, right? So it's much better now. Yeah.
Thank you for that question. Do you have another question?
Well, no. Does anybody else want to talk first?
Okay, you're right. Go ahead.
Oh, you forgot?
Oh, the question, you're so funny.
My question, so I came from Japan, and we see a lot of similarities with like a, Eastern culture, like Chinese culture, like a Korean or like a Taiwan, Hong Kong. I think at like a great East Asia area, we have a lot of similarities. But what I don't see from the Chinese community, especially, is like Lin just said, they cannot use LinkedIn like officially. What do you use for communication?
There's a lot of
WeChat.
WeChat. I'm on
WeChat.
I'm on WeChat, and so CNCF, we do have WeChat channels for our community and projects. So we broadcast like project news, like, hey, new Kubernetes release, we'll broadcast to that one. We also try to do the reverse when there'll be news from maybe a project that has a bigger following in China, and try to broadcast that to other channels. So we're kind of this weird proxy that and me personally, you're on like WeChat, Telegram, Signal, like this is just a nature. Slack, Discord. It's just
social media explosion. Yeah.
Yeah, I would love a meta app. Like, it would be great if I could just have everything all plugged into one little thing, and that would be great.
But I thought like WeChat is just like more or less like a Slack, not like LinkedIn or like a Twitter, for example.
You can share your moments too.
Yeah,
so,
WeChat is like Twitter. It's more Twitter.
So it's like a super app.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mini,
Wow.
mini programs.
Okay.
Yeah, it's out of, you can do restaurant orders out of control.
I guess I was just ignorant, but yeah, that's cool.
You can book train tickets too.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. I learned something today.
Yeah. Yes.
Hi, Chris from Diginomica again. I will phrase this question very carefully, as I really don't want to cause an international incident. But on the subject of cultural challenges, differences in platforms and so on, have you noticed, just in very general terms, not mentioning any names, any increased difficulty in collaborating internationally between China and the US at the moment, or China and the US and Europe? Just in terms of the general political environments, it's become very difficult recently to that environment.
From a maintain, have we noticed any difference between the difference in how we work as a community based on the current political environment? I think from like a maintainer perspective, no. Like, it's just like, do stuff on GitHub, pull requests, review, drink coffee. Like, it's same as usual. Those tools haven't really changed. I think at another level, there's a little bit more complications around like regulations and sanction. Like that's more of like a, let's call it CNCF back office. My role as one of the leaders of organizations is ensure that our maintainers never have to kind of think about all these kind of things regarding regulations, sanctions. We do all the work to ensure that we're compliant, and whether it's license compliance, sanction compliance, we do all that kind of work to make the lives of our maintainers. But day to day, I don't think so. It's if anything, it's gotten easier than it was 5 years ago. Plus, with all the like initial stuff, Kubernetes a long time ago, all the default stuff was served out of GCR, right, and which was a huge pain in the butt, and there was a bit of a refactoring to make that a little bit more distributed, not directly dependent on one shared registry. So things have gotten a little bit easier. I think Kevin may speak a little bit more from perspective, but it seems it was better than it was before. I don't think there's any changes short term. So.
Yeah, I think from the maintainer perspective, we are not affected much. Yeah.
And I remember recently, correct me if I'm wrong, I think somebody submitted a PR around you're not supposed to talk about politics inside of the cloud native community as part of a code of conduct, which I think really helped, because we're all here collaborate to move cloud native forward. Mm-hmm. We don't want to be enemy because you're on a different political side.
Yeah, we like the Linux Foundation motto has always been like open source is a global endeavor, and we do all the work to ensure that that is seamless. And it is a lot of compliance work. We have a good chunk of a legal team that does all these fun things, and it is a chunk of my job and responsibility at CNCF and the LF to ensure that maintainers don't have to worry about this stuff. And for us, like it's this thing this year. It's some type of regulation. Like next year, you have the CRA that's coming into effect at the end of the year, which is a European regulation around security. And like we're already starting to do the work to ensure our projects are ready to to handle that. So the maintainers don't necessarily have to do that work. The foundation staff and leadership are trying to ensure that the wheels of innovation and maintainers could just do their day-to-day without worrying about things too much.
All right, I think we're at the top of the hour. Oh, is there one more question?
You got the last
Last
one.
one.
So
Yeah, go ahead.
last one, and then we'll.
Comes from someone in a different talk. Where do you see the role of the? It's okay, I have a really loud voice. Where do you see the role of the CNCF in standardizing how Gen AI infrastructure is set up, and do you see it converging, just like how NVIDIA has standardized hardware?
So I guess the question, yeah, I mean, so there's an early effort we recently started around, extending the current Kubernetes conformance program to basically standardize how you do AI training, inference, which already people are already doing this, right? What's happened right now is everyone is using a bit of different tools to kind of get things done. We want to replicate basically the success of what we've had with the Kubernetes conformance program, which is arguably one of the most successful open source conformance programs out there. There's over 100 plus projects and products, all over globally that have all come to agreement on here is a TCK and set of APIs that we adhere across, whether you have a product in China, US, Europe, wherever, right? We're taking that to the next level to include how you serve models, how you do inference, because there's a lot of different technologies out there, and that's all part of the kind of let's call it Gen AI infrastructure story. At the infrastructure layer, on the top, that's a little bit above what CNCF does. So, and we literally just announced this week that we're starting this endeavor.
Yeah, Chris announced it yesterday, and I pinned him about 4:04, and he fixed it
I opened the
immediately.
repo. Yeah, I was like, crap, I forgot to open the repo. Oops, so it happens. But yeah, no, we're excited, and a lot of my meetings here this week have actually been on that topic, getting feedback, from everyone, because the initial conformance program took a little bit while, and things are a little bit more complex. And to your point is like on, let's call it, CNCF has always been about, you need to be able to run your stuff on any CPU, GPU, cloud, public, private. That same methodology is going to apply for AI workloads. Unfortunately, the way the market currently has done, we're in a bit of a boom, and it's the people that are there first tend to do the best. But CNCF's all about doing a level playing field and ensuring that workloads run, everywhere. And so, this is what we're good at. We have the structure, we have the companies involved, and now the maintainers are getting together to kind of get this done.
Awesome. I believe that's our last question. Thank you all for joining us. Appreciate your questions, the time. Enjoy the rest of KubeCon. I guess one more session to go.
Yeah,
Thank you,
exactly.
and safe travels too.
I know. Safe travels. And if you're in need of a Nintendo Switch 2, I'll let you know. You could buy them here. That's just letting you know. In the US, it's sold out. So, all right, thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.